Welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our tunes there to get kicked off here today. Welcome to this session where we're going to be talking about really building collaboration in those online learning experiences that you are creating for your participants in your Weed Out the Risk programs. We're excited to be here today with you to share some of these strategies and also to engage you in some collaboration as we go through the activities. So a quick introduction to ourselves. My name is Les Macbeth, and I'm the Director of Special Projects at Future Design School. I've been working in education for about 15 years now. And prior to joining Future Design School about 5 years ago, I worked as a high school teacher at a school here in Toronto. And I have with me my colleague, Quinn Henderson, who is joining us today from Utah. And Quinn is also a former high school teacher. And before that, he was a magician. So fun facts about Quinn. He's now our education lead at Future Design School, and he works with educators all across North America to help them to develop really amazing learning experiences for their students. A little more about who we are at Future Design School. At Future Design School, our goal is really to empower teachers to develop future-ready students. So we do this through a number of different programs and activities. We work with schools and nonprofit organizations. We work with higher education institutions, and we also work with big companies. But really what we're trying to do is help to set teachers up to develop some of these skills and competencies in their students so that they can be successful in the future. And when we think about those skills and competencies, we like to frame it around this sort of multiple ring approach to a portrait of a future ready graduate. Starting in the center there by helping our students to develop a sense of optimism and psychological safety, because we know that's so important for learning. Then building on that to create healthy relationships and develop self-regulation skills, as well as responsible decision-making, which I'm sure a lot of you are also working in that pink ring as well. Learning goals build on that around things like using learning strategies and self-reflection. Then we get into character around stewardship and empathy and resourcefulness. And finally, we build on those core competencies that we know our students will need to be successful in the future, like critical thinking and creativity and collaboration. So we do all that by working with schools and organizations all across North America. So we run programming like this on effective online teaching. We also develop curriculum resources. We run student programming. And you'll also see on here that we work with a lot of big companies. So we work with these companies to really help them to develop programs and services that they're offering to the public. But in that, what we're doing is gathering information on what kind of skills they're looking for in their students for the future. If you came to our session this morning, you'll see a similar setup here where we always like to outline our goals at the beginning of a session. And so part of our goal today is to model for you how we run online facilitation by giving you some tips and tricks, but also having you actually participate in some of those things. So the first thing we like to model is always starting with our goals. So our goals today are really to make connections with others about your experience in online facilitating. So we're going to have you do some collaboration today. We're going to give you some tools to facilitate that online collaboration. And we're also going to have you actually identify a challenge and apply some best practices in online learning to try to overcome that challenge. So before we get started, we are actually going to do a little warm-up activity. And our warm-up activity is going to be based around this idea that we all have a certain propensity when it comes to taking risks. I'm sure that risk is something that you talk about all the time with your participants in your programs. And we like to use this as a warm-up, and we're more than happy for you to steal this warm-up and use it with your students as well when it comes to thinking about how comfortable we are with risk. So what we're going to do is get you to go to this link that you will see here that I believe Quinn has just dropped in the chat. And what this link will take you to is a place where you will be able to answer a question. So we're going to be using a tool here called Poll Everywhere in order to run this part of the session. So Quinn, did you drop that into the chat there? My chat isn't loading. Okay, awesome. Yep. So hopefully you all see that in the chat there. And I'm going to give you a kind of like behind the scenes tour here of how Poll Everywhere works. So we're going to use this as a warm up, but also as a learning opportunity. So essentially what we're going to do is I'm going to put into on the screen here a specific prompt around an activity. You're going to think about that activity and where it lies for you in your risk zones. So how risky does this activity feel for you? And this could be something that's in your comfort zone, So something that you feel like, yeah, I totally feel confident and comfortable doing this thing. It could be in your apprehension zone, which is, maybe with the right support from other people, I would feel comfortable doing this. Or it could be something that feels way outside your comfort zone, in which case it would be in your risk zone or your danger zone. So you should all have up on your screens that link that Quinn sent you. And our first prompt is going to be skydiving. So what you're going to do is on the page that link that you click on in the chat there, you can see that I can see your answers as they're coming in. So we've got some people saying skydiving is in their comfort zone. We've got one person who says it's in their danger. We've got someone in the apprehension zone, someone in the risk zone, more apprehension. All right, we got a pretty even mix here around our comfort levels when it comes to skydiving, which is a pretty easy one. So this is the back end of Poll Everywhere that you can see here on my screen. I'm able to now clear those responses, and then I'll give you another prompt. So our next prompt is going to be facilitating online sessions. Where does this fall in your personal zone of risk? I see we've got some comfort zones. People are feeling pretty good. I feel like we're all really accustomed to living life online. I bet if I had asked this question 12 months ago, we probably have a lot more people who are in the apprehension or the danger zone. But now that we all live in this new reality where everything's online, we see a lot of comfort zone coming in there. So that's great. I'm going to clear those responses again, and we'll give you the next prompt, which is fixing something around the house. How handy is this group? How confident do we feel in doing home improvement projects? See, we've got some people in the apprehension. We've got some people in the risk zone. All right, no one's in the comfort zone. We're going to have to do a webinar next time on how to do handiwork around the house. That's great. So we see a lot of apprehension. I got one comfort zone now. That's good. That's great. Our next one is going to be supporting youth through challenging experiences. I know this is probably in the wheelhouse for a lot of you, so I just cleared those responses. How do you feel about supporting youth through challenging experiences? See some people in the comfort, some in the apprehension. Right in the middle. I like whoever chose right in the middle. It's a good call. Sometimes you kind of feel like you're in the middle between things. That's great. All right. We've got a couple more prompts here, so I'm going to clear these responses again and go to our next one, which is karaoke. How do we all feel about karaoke in non-pandemic times? Obviously, right now, getting in a small room full of people and singing together is probably in everyone's danger zone, but non-pandemic times, how do we feel about karaoke? Got comfort zone, risk zone, awesome. And if you want to drop into the chat there, what's your favorite karaoke song? If you're in the comfort zone, you can go ahead and share that. So as you can see here, this is a really simple tool. It's actually really easy to set up. It might seem like it's complicated in looking at it, but Poll Everywhere is actually a really great way to engage your students in some simple warm-up activities like this. And there's all kinds of different features and settings on it, but the most simple version of it is you can just ask questions. There's also a tool to actually embed this into slide decks if you wanted to do that as well. So that is the anything by Celine Dion. Quinn says he wants to sing. He's just playing to his Canadian audience here right now. So that is the end of our warm up, but we like to end on the karaoke question because when it comes to trying new things, something like online facilitating or trying some of these new tech tools, we like to encourage people to adopt what we call the karaoke mindset, which is really to not be afraid to put yourself out there and try new things, even if you're not very good at it. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Quinn, who is going to talk about facilitating online collaboration.
Yes, I always love doing those energizers right off the bat. And, sometimes we do it the same ones, but the responses and the engagement's always different. And not only is it great for the participants to be able to start to engage in the session, it's actually great for us as far as facilitators to go to really start to get tuned in and engage, set the tone for the session. And those polls are a great way to engage the participants without having to come off mute, you know. So if you don't have polls, you don't have access to Zoom polls or polls in Google Meet, you can use poll everywhere, but you could also use prompts on the screen like Les was doing, and then have people drop their responses into the chat as well. So with that in mind, we really want to dig into what makes for effective facilitation. So as we dig into the work today, we want to think about effective facilitation, what it looks like from the role of the facilitator. So no longer really the facilitator being that sage on the stage, but rather as facilitators, we're the ones that we get to plan, we get to guide, we get to manage our group of participants to really ensure that they're going to meet the objectives that we've set out to meet. And so we do this by first providing context of the experience, or really the why. Why are they learning what they're learning? Why is it important? And in order to get buy-in, we need learners to see the relevance of the topic that we are covering, and then how that topic connects back to their learning goals or their objectives. And facilitating effectively allows learners to make meaningful connections to the materials or those topics being covered, how it relates back to themselves, and then how they're driving connection with others in the group, as well as that connection with the facilitator themselves. And then there should be opportunities for our participants to contribute, right? Contribute the ideas that they come up with along the way. And where the facilitator, our role is to really honor the expertise and honor those ideas of those that are in the room or online in this case, and really give them the opportunities to share their ideas and their experiences. And then finally, applying the learning, right? Applying the learning from the sessions to create something tangible that they can walk away with and show what they've learned. And so we refer to these as the 4 C's of effective facilitation. That includes the context, the connection, contribution, and creation. And all of these together is going to lead to greater productivity and efficiency of a session while really promoting that depth of critical thinking among our participants. And so we'll be using the 4 C's today to think about how to effectively facilitate some training sessions with our students, with our participants, with our colleagues in a variety of situations. And so I'm going to pass it over to Les now to start to talk about context.
Thanks, Quinn.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm jumping the gun, aren't I?
Oh, all right. You want to keep going?
Yeah, I'll definitely keep going. This is
All
good.
right,
What would it take to create?
So let's think about to address this question, we'll go ahead and use the chat. What do you hope to learn today? So you feel free to drop that into the chat. What do you want to be able to walk away with? What's the context? And we can share that in the chat as we go along here. And there are a variety of ways that we could do this and a variety of tools that we could use. And since we're a little bit limited on time today, we won't use some of those tools. But feel free to share in the chat what you hope to learn. Someone saying here, hope to become a more effective facilitator in this online world. Absolutely, that's a great goal. It's a constant goal. It's ever evolving, ever changing. Different challenges arise all the time. Different tools come up all of the time. Different student responses or participant responses are coming up all the time. How to be more interesting online. I think that's something really interesting to be able to explore. One of those challenges, and we brought this up in the last session, is sometimes your participants, you can't see them. Their cameras are off, right? And so how do you get them to a point where they might come offline or they might engage or might be able to interact a little bit more? So feel free to continue to share those things that you want to learn in relation to context today. And then next, we want you to drop in the chat thinking about the connection C of the 4 C's. What's been the most challenging aspect of encouraging online collaboration? Again, feel free to drop that in the chat. What's been that challenge for you in encouraging that online collaboration? And I think what Max here put in the chat is one of the ones that I think has been a challenge for me sometimes, is how to stimulate participation without having that visual feedback. I think that is a large challenge. And Zoom fatigue, absolutely. From one Zoom meeting to another online meeting to another online meeting, it does take its toll on you. I mean, that's one thing that I would have never thought. Sometimes you think about being at home in the same spot and you're like, that's great. But somehow we're able to pack even more in a day when we don't have to get up and move around. Reaching kids in pertinent way, not losing their focus. Absolutely. There are a lot of distractions that come along with learning at home or learning remotely. And so being able to keep their attention and keep them focused is definitely an obstacle. So thanks for sharing those and engaging in the chat. And when we think about context and connection, now I'm going to hand it over to Les to talk about our next goal.
Thanks, Quinn. So in the response to some of those things around stimulating participation without visual feedback and Zoom fatigue, we're going to talk about some tech tools that you can use that layer on top of Zoom nicely as a way to increase some of that active engagement in using those tech tools. So when we think about using tech tools to increase active engagement, what we really want to use tech tools for is to scaffold project management. So if you've got students working on something together where they're collaborating, using some of those tools to facilitate that collaboration by leveraging templates and visual thinking, and really making sure that you're checking in with students on a regular basis. And these really fall into that blue ring of our overall portrait of our students. So the way we're going to do this is just to make it fun and a little bit more interesting is we are going to see how many tech tools we can share in 5 minutes, because we've only got about 30 minutes for our session here and we want to get to another activity for you. So we're going to do this in a rapid fire format where I'm going to attempt to share 3 different tech tools in 5 minutes. Know that this is not meant to be like a deep how-to tutorial on using these tools, but rather to pique your interest so that maybe you can go off and check these out afterwards and learn a little bit more about each of these tools. So for each tool, I'm going to talk about a rule of thumb and then what tool we like to use to enforce that rule of thumb. So our first rule of thumb is really around visual thinking. We find that because we can't see our students' faces and sometimes they're not really willing to unmute themselves, having a visual place where they can show their ideas and share those ideas is really valuable. And for that, our favorite tech tool is something called Padlet, which you experienced if you came to our session this morning. We used Padlet for one of our activities. And what this really does is allow you to create essentially like a collaborative bulletin board where students can go ahead and share their ideas. They can engage in activities. You can see some examples coming up on the screen here. You can have them answer specific questions. You can have them do reflections. There's all kinds of great examples that they actually have in their online resource that they have. It's called a gallery where you can go and you can steal templates that other people have created or creatively borrow those, I guess you could say. But it's a great way to have students engage actively and share their ideas in a collaborative manner, even if they're not willing to unmute themselves and have those face-to-face discussions. So it's a great kind of stand-in for a face-to-face discussion. If any of you have used Padlet in your facilitation, please feel free to share some of those ideas in the chat there. So our next rule of thumb is that you should never speak for more than 5 minutes without active participation from our students. We know that speaking more than 5 minutes, people tend to tune out. This is when you get kids clicking on other tabs and watching hockey highlights or whatever it is that they'd rather be doing than listening to you talk. Unfortunately, that's kind of the reality we deal with as teachers a lot of the time. But if we keep those interactions till at least every 5 minutes, they're being required to engage, it makes them stay connected because they know that if they check out, they're going to lose the plot and they're going to not be able to follow along. So making those decks interactive. And our favorite tool for making decks interactive is something called Pear Deck. So Pear Deck is a way to take your existing slide decks and make them interactive by adding things like quizzes or questions and responses. It works through an add-on for Google Slides or for PowerPoint, depending on which presentation software you're using. And you can do multiple choice questions or open-ended questions. It's kind of like that poll everywhere thing we did for our opening warm-up here, but you can build it right into your slide deck. So as you're going through and pulling some of those resources from the Weed Out the Risk pages, you can actually pull that into a slide deck and then create Pear Deck activities. So again, if you've tried Pear Deck or other interactive presentation software, we'd love for you to go ahead and share that in the chat. And last but not least, our last rule of thumb is that recording thoughts and ideas before launching into a discussion gives everyone time to process. I saw someone in the chat mention something about meeting students' needs who have LD needs. And we found that giving thinking time and processing time is especially important for those kids who might need a little bit more time to process information. And our favorite tool for doing this is something called Jamboard. So Jamboard is a tool from Google, And essentially, it's like a collaborative whiteboard. But if we were ever running a session with our students and we asked them to, we wanted to ask them to respond to a question, rather than simply saying, go ahead and answer this question out loud, unmute yourself, or even drop it in the chat right away, what we find is that some students need more time to think. So by having them use something like a Jamboard, it allows them time to process their ideas, put them down on paper, and then you can open up the actual live sort of verbal discussion in your group. And this, we think, really can increase that collaboration and active engagement. And we're actually going to use Jamboard for an activity in a moment here to kind of demonstrate how it works. So the question that we're going to be asking in this activity is around what tools you have used to facilitate online collaboration in your experiences. And this is going to be the sort of contribute portion of our workshop today. And I'm going to pass it over to Quinn for that.
Yes, you're probably already thinking about responding to that particular question. So I'm going to give you some instructions and some details around this activity. And this is going to be a whole group collaboration. And when we have the opportunity, we like to do small group collaboration depending on the size of the group and leverage tools like breakout rooms. But in this case, we can use the whole group for this, and we'll be using that Jamboard. So you'll be working with everybody here that is logged into our session, and you're going to be capturing some more strategies for improving online collaboration and engagement. And so you can share those tech tools and strategies that you've tried or ideas that you'd like to try even after some of the sessions that you've been to today. So we'll be able to answer this question. And so we're going to drop a link into the chat, which is going to take you to a Jamboard file. So when you click on that link,
wrong link, sorry.
Wrong link.
I copied the wrong link.
False start there.
It's got to be something that goes wrong. I apologize. I'm going to put the right link in here. That's a link for another event that we're running with Google today.
Another engagement strategy, right? To keep people on their toes, see if they can catch when you post the wrong link. So we're going to post the right link into the chat here. That's that one on the screen that you can see. 1 second, it will be up in the chat.
Do you guys see it?
I'm not seeing it in there. Let me see if I can grab it.
Huh. I dropped it in there. Did you get the wrong link that I sent?
I got the wrong link. I dropped it. Oh, there it is. Yours just showed up.
I see people on there, which is great. So when you get on here, you're just going to click on this little sticky note on the left-hand side, and that will allow you to write. So over here on the left, you'll see a sticky note. If you click on that little white box, you can go ahead and drop in. Quinn's used Jamboard. Great.
Yeah, I threw on Jamboard. Why not? Let's get the ball rolling there. So what are the one tool that you use for online collaboration? Right, so we'll give you a minute there to drop in any tools that you've used, you've thought about using, you'd like to use, and I'll give you a moment to see what Mentimeter.
Coming in there, that's a good one. Some other tools that we haven't done here today. There's one called Goose Chase that I love. That's actually really fun. It's like a scavenger hunt activity. Might not fit Weed Out the Risk resources very well, but if you run other programs where you want students to maybe get away from their computers, that would be a way to do that.
Yeah, poll systems on a lot of different platforms. Google Forms, another great tool to be able to collaborate. Another vote for Mentimeter there. One thing I like about Jamboard here too is we can start to group things together if we wanted to, and certain ideas. And we'll give you an example of how you might be able to use this in your online facilitation. Actually,
it just so happens that I have set up on the next slide here an example of how you could use this with the Weed Out the Risk activities. So if you're looking at the Weed Out the Risk activities and you want students to maybe contribute to a conversation around the ways that cannabis is consumed or the effect that it has on your senses, you can see I've got a Jamboard set up here that you could use with students. And then on the third panel, if you click at the top there, you'll see I've got another version of what that could look like, maybe making it a little bit more fun by pulling in some icons around what are the impacts of cannabis on the different parts of your body. And this could be a great way to just get the kids engaged in brainstorming rather than doing that, Ferris Bueller thing where you ask the question and it goes out into the ether and no one answers. This we find is a bit better to get students actually engaged in those activities. So you can flip through those panels there, and you can also, if you want to make a copy of this Jamboard, it's pretty easy. You just click on here and then click make a copy. You can steal this activity and use it in your own facilitation as well. So with that, we are almost out of time today. This 30 minutes really flies by, but I think I just walked you through these examples here about leveraging the Jamboard. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here just to wrap up. So in terms of wrapping up, another thing we like to model is coming back to our goals at the end of a session and kind of highlighting these are the things that we covered today. So we made some connections with others about your experience in facilitating online. We learned a few different tech tools to help with that. And we identified some challenges and thought about how we might be able to overcome those. So as you're moving forward in your facilitation online, we have a few other resources that might be interesting for you. So one is that we have something called the Future of Ed report that we created earlier this year that was really all about 5 trends in online learning that were happening during the pandemic. So you can download that for free. It's a pretty detailed report, but there might be some stories in there that could inspire you around that effective online engagement with your students in your programs. And just to wrap up, we know that you are facing many challenges, that you're doing incredible work every day. I said this in the session this morning, and I'll say it again because I really mean it, that the work that you're doing is so important and it's really inspiring for us. And we've really enjoyed working with Weed Out the Risk over the past several months on a few of these different presentations. And the more we learn about the programming, the more we see what an incredible job you all are doing and the incredible value that you're bringing to young people in your communities. So huge kudos to all of you for that. And if you ever want help with that, please do feel to reach out to us. You can find us all over the internet at these addresses, or please feel free just to drop in the chat and we can share our email addresses if you want to connect directly. But to wrap up, just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for spending your 30 minutes with us today. We know it's coming to the end of a long day with a lot of content. I was able to watch some of the other sessions this morning, and I think there's a lot of great things that you've all been able to take away from today. And we hope that our sessions here contributed to that. So have a great afternoon, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you again sometime.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.